Okay, what I was gonna do before I got interrupted was to go through this article because um, there's a lot of details I had a comment about. So, Trump won't rule out deploying U.S. troops to support rebuilding Gaza, sees long term U.S. ownership, which I think is a bait and switch kind of a thing. President Donald Trump on Tuesday suggested that displaced Palestinians in Gaza be permanently resettled. I don't think that's what the Palestinian people would like to do. Nobody wants to leave their home. What you should do, Mr. Trump, if you're planning to redevelop the area into the Riviera of the Middle East, is not force Gazans to leave, but employ them while you provide the money and the planning at the behest of the Palestinians to rebuild the buildings, the infrastructure, or whatever needs to be done, so that it will be the home that the Palestinians want, not the French Riviera that Trump wants. Put them to work and pay them to be carpenters and plumbers and steel workers and electricians. And they'll be able to feed themselves. I don't understand. Just leave Gaza. You've got a whole workforce sitting there waiting. It's insane. You've gone insane, President Trump. There's no point in sending the workforce that you need to rebuild Gaza out of the country. They'll have a lot of pride in rebuilding their country if you don't send them off. Don't you think it's preposterous to rebuild the whole place without the interaction of the Palestinians? And then in 5 years to say, okay, we rebuilt it, you can come back now. And do you really think that's going to happen? The you can come back now part? Once you've built the Mid-Eastern Riviera, is it going to be suitable rent levels for war-torn refugees of Palestine? Because I have a feeling they're not going to have a whole lot of money to move into your brand new Middle East Riviera. Is that kind of what you're thinking? Once we rebuild this, we'll have other rich folks who'll want to move in here. That's what I'm thinking. Trump's brazen proposal appears certain to roil the next stage of talks meant to extend the tenuous ceasefire between Israel and Hamas and secure the release of the remaining hostages held in Gaza. Yeah, I imagine so. Whatever candy and honeypot you're offering Netanyahu over there, I don't have a feeling that Palestinians stand to benefit from that. Or at least they probably don't expect to benefit from it. And I don't think that Hamas expects to benefit from it. The provocative comments came as talks are ramping up this week with the promise of surging humanitarian aid and reconstruction supplies to help the people of Gaza recover after more than 15 months of devastating conflict. You know, I just don't believe it. You said, yeah, we've got to dismantle U.S. aid. But then you're going to turn around and say that you're sending humanitarian aid and reconstruction supplies to Gaza. Well, I just kind of wonder what U.S. aid would be doing if you weren't shutting them down. Now Trump wants to push roughly 1.8 million people to leave the land they have called home and claim it for the U.S., perhaps with American troops. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip and we will do a job with it too. I bet you will. You'll turn it into a big old golf resort for Trump and Trump's friends, won't you? Trump said at an evening news conference with Netanyahu by his side, yeah. I wonder what Netanyahu's handicap is. Does Netanyahu come away with the better score, or it's okay, Donald. You're doing so much better than me. I don't mind that you won. The president, who made his name as a New York real estate developer, added, "We'll make sure that it's done world class." Yeah, I don't think the Palestinians are going to be able to afford world class. It'll be wonderful for the people. Palestinians mostly, we're talking about. Mostly? Yeah, I still wonder, what's the rent level going to look like once you're done rebuilding? And how do you decide who lives where and who gets the penthouse? And who gets the basement and how many basements and penthouses there are? Trump outlined his thinking as he held talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House, where the two leaders also discussed the fragile ceasefire and hostage deal and the Israeli-Hamas conflict and shared concerns about Iran. Yeah, I guess we're all worried about Iran, huh? Trump said the U.S. would redevelop the territory after Palestinians are resettled elsewhere. I'd still like to reiterate what I said above. You've got a workforce standing there that could rebuild. What they need is supplies. Since they're human beings living in the 21st century, my guess is there's a lot of Palestinians that know how to run pipes and wires and raise walls, pour concrete, operate backhoes. My guess is they would be able to do that kind of stuff if you bring the supplies. I think it's absolutely disgusting that you would suggest the U.S. taking ownership. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I'm going to get through the rest of this article because I'm just so disgusted. Trump said the U.S. would redevelop the territory after Palestinians are resettled elsewhere and turn the territory into a place where the world's people, including Palestinians, I don't think the Palestinians want the world's people on their property would live. He offered no detail about what authority the U.S. would use to take the land and develop it. Yeah, you know why? Because who do you guess will give the authority? Good old Benjamin standing there. Sure, you can redevelop the Gaza Strip for us, and as long as you'll hand it right back to us when you're done. Of course, Benjamin. Well, what else would we do with it? Right after you snip the ribbon on the golf course, I think Netanyahu will be standing there waiting to take a hold of ownership of the key to the city. But do you think that's going to happen? Allies reject the idea. Egypt, Jordan, and other U.S. allies in the Middle East have cautioned Trump that relocating Palestinians from Gaza would threaten Mideast stability, risk expanding the conflict, and undermine a decades-long push by the U.S. and allies for a two-state solution. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry issued a sharply worded reaction to Trump, noting their long call for an independent Palestinian state was a firm, steadfast, and unwavering position. Saudi Arabia has been in negotiations with the U.S. over a deal to diplomatically recognize Israel in exchange for a security pact and other terms. I still don't know what that means. The duty of the international community today is to work to alleviate the severe human suffering endured by the Palestinian people, who will remain committed to their land and will not budge from it, the Saudi statement said. Well, I hope the Saudis are more sincere than Donald Trump and Hamas and Netanyahu. But I wonder. Still, Trump insists the Palestinians have no alternative. I see that's so fake. They do have an alternative. You put them to work rebuilding their land and provide the monetary assistance and the supplies to do so. Wood, pipes, wires, pumps, tractors, everything. You ought to give them the Palestinians a blank check for what's been done to them. But push them out of their land is wrong. That's not the way to do it. Still, Trump insists Palestinians have no alternative but to leave the big pile of rubble that is Gaza. Well, you know, I recall we had a pile of rubble in downtown Manhattan. I have a feeling there was a bunch of dump trucks and backhoes involved and front end loaders clearing that big pile of rubble away. I have been on jobs sitting in a dump truck. We hauled away so much piles of dirt and gravel and stone to build the 5th runway of the Atlanta airport. I just couldn't believe it. We looked across the land and we were like, how in the hell would this ever be a runway that you could land 777 on? But it's there. There's no point in pointing to the big pile of rubble and saying that the Palestinians have no alternative. We're humans. We can deal with big piles of rubble. I guarantee you, if the Palestinians had a bunch of dump trucks and backhoes, they could deal with big piles of rubble. That's the alternative to forcing the Palestinians to leave. He spoke out at his top aide stressed as his top aide stressed that a 3 to 5 year timeline for reconstruction of the war-torn territory as laid out in a temporary truce agreement is not viable. Well, I don't think it's viable either, unless the Palestinians are allowed to stay and help to do it. Last week, both Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Jordanian King Abdullah II dismissed Trump's calls to resettle Gaza. Well, I agree with that. You look over the decades, it's all death in Gaza, Trump said. This has been happening. I wish they'd said more about what Egypt and Jordan said, rather than just a one-liner, and now we're going off to Trump to see what Trump says now. But here's what Trump says. You look over the decades, it's all death in Gaza. This has been happening for years. It's all death. If we can get a beautiful area to resettle people permanently in nice homes where they can be happy and not be shot and not killed. And you know what? It doesn't matter how beautiful it is if you don't remove the problem of the people who are doing the shooting and the knifing. As long as Benjamin Netanyahu is shooting at them and will probably be shooting at them again in the near future, it doesn't matter whether you build a new French Riviera or not. Trump also said he isn't ruling out deploying U.S. troops to support reconstruction of Gaza. That's kind of backhanded, don't you think? Usually you send a workforce to rebuild something. The only thing is you don't need to send a workforce. There's a workforce standing there. They just don't have the supplies and the food and the water and the clothes and the boots that they would need to start rebuilding. Be nice if you'd send them some clothes and food and water and boots and hammers and nails and concrete trucks and whatnot, instead of the military. Not to mention, I don't know if you think about this right, but it'd be a whole lot cheaper to send a bunch of concrete trucks and farm tractors and tools, ships full of food and water, than it would be to send the military. Oh, right, you dismantled USAID. Trump also said he isn't ruling out deploying U.S. troops to support reconstruction of Gaza. He envisions long-term U.S. ownership of a redevelopment of the territory. And then what? I've heard we rebuilt Kuwait. I don't know how that turned out, really. I need to go read about that to see how that turned out. Were the people of Kuwait able to move back in? Could they afford it? I don't know. I'd love to read about that. I probably should make a video. How did Kuwait turn out? The president's proposal was greeted with alarm by Democrats, I imagine so, and a measure of skepticism by his Republican allies. He's completely lost it, said Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat, Connecticut. He wants a U.S. invasion of Gaza. Yeah, that's what it looks like, which would cost thousands of American lives and set the Middle East on fire for 20 years. It's sick. That probably would be. On the other hand, I don't think Trump is expecting it to cost American lives. I think Trump probably thinks he'll send the U.S. military in there and nobody is going to oppose the U.S. military moving into Gaza, right? You might be wrong, Mr. Trump. You might be wrong. Senator Lindsey Graham. We'll see what our Arab friends say about that. Senator Lindsey Graham, a South Carolina Republican and Trump ally. And I think most South Carolinians are probably not excited about sending Americans to take over Gaza. Well, I'm here in Georgia, next door to South Carolina, and I don't think too swiftly about sending American troops to Gaza either. I think that might be problematic, but I'll keep an open mind. Also said by Lindsey Graham. How open is your mind, Senator Graham? You seem to be stuck on elected Republicans, even if they're Trump. Is Senator Graham open to trans folks and gay marriage? I just wonder how open-minded Senator Graham is. A fragile ceasefire. The White House's focus on the future of Gaza comes as the nascent truce between Israel and Hamas hangs in the balance. Netanyahu is facing competing pressure from his right-wing coalition to end a temporary truce against Hamas militants in Gaza and from war-weary Israelis who want the remaining hostages home and for the 15-month conflict to end. Trump may be betting he can persuade Egypt and Jordan to come around to accept displaced Palestinians because of the significant aid that U.S. provides Cairo and Amman. Well, how is that aid delivered? Did U.S. aid have anything to do with that delivery? Because you're dismantling an agency that has historically, at least in recent times, delivered 40 to 70% of the aid delivered by the U.S. If I'm wrong, y'all can bleep bloop that down. hardline right-wing members of Netanyahu's government have embraced the call to move displaced Palestinians out of Gaza. Yeah, of course. To me, it's unfair to explain to Palestinians that they might be back in 5 years. Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. Do you think they'll be able to come back after the Trump builds the French Riviera on the coast of Israel? Forget all about Gaza and Palestinians by that time. Trump's Mid-East envoy Steve Witkoff said. That's just preposterous. So even the Mid-East envoy doesn't think it's reasonable proposal to send Palestinians away and tell them to come back in 5 years. I didn't even come up with the word that's preposterous. But yeah, I agree. Trump also signaled that he may be reconsidering an independent Palestinian state as part of a broader two-state solution to the decades long. Well, do it now! Why wait? You've got the most powerful leader of the free world and the guy who's been bombing Gaza standing there in the same office together. Why don't you guys just say, all right, fine. We'll declare Gaza the Palestinian state. Just go ahead and give the Palestinians the fucking land. You don't really believe that Trump's interested in a two-state solution if he's not going to do it now. He's just the words are just air coming out of his mouth. I just can't believe it. Just why are you saying, well, we're going to do this, but later there might be a two-state solution later? There's nothing in the world stopping you from doing it now. So sick. He says, well, a lot of plans change with time, he told reporters when asked if he was still committed to a plan like the one he laid out in 2020 that called for a Palestinian state. A lot of death has occurred since I left and now came back. What does he mean? If he was open to a two-state solution in 2020, a lot has changed now? Does that mean that, read between the lines, I'm not really interested in a two-state solution? Netanyahu's arrival in Washington for the first foreign leader visit of Trump's second term coincides with the Prime Minister's popular support sagging. The Prime Minister is in the middle of weeks-long testimony in an ongoing corruption trial that centers on allegations he exchanged favors with media moguls and wealthy associates. He has decried the accusations and said he is the victim of a witch hunt. Well, that's a big old piece of Trump speak, isn't it? So Netanyahu hanging around with Trump long enough to start talking like Trump. Trump's always talking about there being a witch hunt for him. Here's Netanyahu. They're saying there's a witch hunt for him too. I guess they're just brothers, huh? Getting witch hunted together. Being seen with Trump, who is popular in Israel, I don't know how that popular Trump is in Israel, could help distract the people from the trial and boost Netanyahu's standing. We have the right leader of Israel who's done a great job, Trump said of Netanyahu. Well, I mean, he's done a pretty good job of bombing the Gaza Strip, north, south, and central. Oh, you people in the north need to evacuate to the south. So we can bomb the south? Yeah, Netanyahu's done a great job. Netanyahu praised Trump's leadership in getting the hostage and ceasefire deal. You pat my back and I'll pat your back. The Prime Minister also spoke glowingly of Trump thinking outside the box. What box? What thinking? You say things others refuse to say, and after the jaw drop, people scratch their heads and say, you know, he's right. They do? Who says that? It sure as hell isn't me. I haven't heard Donald Trump say a fucking thing that's right. It sure as hell isn't right now. Hamas, in a statement, decried Trump's comments. We reject Trump's statements in which he said the residents of the Gaza Strip have no choice but to leave, and we consider them a recipe for creating chaos and tension in the region, the group said. Like I said a while ago in the previous video, I think that Hamas is just waiting to continue to control Palestinians. It's amazing to me. I just don't think that Trump or Netanyahu or Hamas has the Palestinians' best interests in heart or in mind. Netanyahu met with White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and Witkoff on Monday to begin the daunting work of brokering the next phase of the ceasefire agreement. The Israeli leader said he would send a delegation to Qatar to continue indirect talks with Hamas that are being mediated by the Gulf Arab country, the first confirmation that those negotiations would continue. Netanyahu also said he would convene his security cabinet to discuss Israel's demands for the next phase of ceasefire when he returns to Israel at the end of the week. Israel's demands. Witkoff, meanwhile, said he plans to meet with Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani in Florida. I wonder if that'll be on the golf course. On Thursday to discuss the next phase of the ceasefire. Qatar and Egypt have served as key intermediaries with Hamas throughout the conflict. Netanyahu is under intense pressure from hard-right members of his government coalition to abandon the ceasefire. I read this earlier, but here we are. And resume fighting in Gaza to eliminate Hamas. Yeah, I expect that'll mean bombing more Palestinians. Bezalel Smotrich, one of Netanyahu's key partners, vows to topple the government if the war isn't relaunched, a step that could lead to early elections. So, Um, I just don't know what your future's going to be like, Mr. Netanyahu. You're in a big quandary, aren't you? You sucking up to Donald Trump, hoping that Donald Trump will be your key to staying in power against the people who want to topple your government if you don't relaunch the war. It's hard to believe that Benjamin Netanyahu has any possibility of sincerity standing in the White House talking to President Trump, while he knows back home that the other people in his government are preparing to topple the government if the war is not restarted. They're just waiting on pins and needles to start shooting again. And I won't be surprised if the shooting begins again real soon with the Palestinians in the way. Hamas, which has reasserted control over Gaza, of course, since the ceasefire began last month, has said it will not release hostages in the second phase without. Why aren't the Palestinians getting rid of Hamas? You know, I add that to my research that I need to do about how Kuwait turned out. I just wonder why the Palestinians just keep Hamas around. It's kind of crazy. Hamas, which has reasserted control over Gaza since the ceasefire began last month, has said it will not release hostages in the second phase without an end to the war and Israeli forces' full withdrawal. It's kind of a catch-22, don't you think? Well, we'll leave if you'll release the hostages. Well, we'll release the hostages if you'll leave. Who's first? See, here it is. Netanyahu, meanwhile, maintains that Israel is committed to victory over Hamas and the return of all hostages captured in the October 7th, 2023 attack that triggered the war. You know, that's a hair trigger, isn't it? The last I counted, Netanyahu has killed something like 30 times more Palestinians than Hamas has killed Israelis. So, WTF, mate? Love you. Bye.